Philip, there are a lot of different reports circulating about what exactly happened in Bago on Friday. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges is now that the junta has switched off nearly all internet connections in Myanmar, and certainly, in towns like Bago, which are, not the largest residential centres, it can be very slow for news to come out. And but what has become clear and what really has emerged in the last 24 hours is that on Friday morning, the military moved in with, or security forces moved in with very heavy weaponry with rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns on a sort of fixed protest camp. Most protests have been sort of come and go. They've set up barricades, they've retreated. But in Pago, they had claimed sort of an area of land, and there were people sleeping there. And they were caught unawares when the military started this raid. Some people escaped, but otherwise, there was a slaughter there. There are some pictures have now been come out of sort of shot on phones that have found their way out around the internet ban, and you could see these grenades and machine gun fire sort of blasting into this area where the protesters had been. The death toll is very difficult to tell, not least because, according to many local witnesses, the security forces were removing bodies, both of injured and clearly of dead people, and taking them back to a Buddhist compound, which they were using as their sort of base in the town. They've done this at other protests as well. They've pulled away bodies because if people are alive, then they treat them in medical hospitals and they charge them for being protesters. And if they're dead, they don't want everybody to know the tally. But obviously, these sorts of pressure groups that are monitoring this, they can speak to families. They know people who were there. They do quite a good job of trying to be quite conservative in their estimates. And so when they said, recently they believed 82 people had died there, when you see the ferocity of the violence and given how these groups compile the numbers, they're probably in the right area. And that would be the single worst atrocity since the coup and since the crackdown on the protesters. There have been days when more deaths have been lost, but in terms of a single incident, this will be the deadliest.
Now, meanwhile, Philip, the UN's special envoy for Myanmar arrived where you are in Bangkok on Friday, but her hopes of trying to end this whole crisis have so far been dashed somewhat.
Yeah, she's facing a very challenging mission. I mean, first, she's starting off with 7 days in quarantine. But can obviously, conduct meetings and online from there and through video. Then she will start face-to-face meetings with Thai officials. She's trying to sort of encourage the regional powers to sort of formulate some sort of position where they at least, who are they going to approach on the two sides, and what are the minimum sort of arrangements for how they're going to have conversations. There is an Association of Southeast Asian Nations summit on Myanmar on April the 20th. But, ASEAN, that organization, has a great principle of non-interference in each other's affairs. So, people are skeptical about how much they can do. But, I mean, the Chinese have been talking to Southeast Asian nations. China is very unhappy about the level of insecurity in the country because of their investments. So although they traditionally have had the back of the Myanmar when it comes to votes in international fora, they want this crisis settled. So, maybe there are some conversations there behind the scenes on trying to put pressure on the two sides. But what you have at the moment, fundamentally in Myanmar, is a military junta which is intent on suppressing dissent by violence, and you have a very determined protest movement and civil disobedience movement who say they've stolen our elections, they've stolen our country, they've stolen our freedom. There is nothing to negotiate. So, it's a very, very tough situation to even think of where you might bring these two sides together. But the UN envoy will be holding these talks, and there is that regional summit coming up on April the 20th, and maybe sort of down the line there may be routes into compromise and discussions. But it seems a very challenging situation at the moment for diplomacy.
Okay, Philip, show